Thank you. All right, so let's get started. And as Avrami said, at the end of this, I will have time for questions. Just be aware right away, I'm not going to be answering questions for somebody's specific heritage case. I'm more than happy to answer general questions, but I'm not going to be able to, do an evaluation of every single person who is attending this for various heritage citizenships. It's just not realistic. There are a lot of people here. So, restoring roots, a practical discussion of heritage citizenship. So, basics. Why citizenship reclamation? And what I'm going to discuss today. First of all, I'm going to go over what is heritage citizenship, what is citizenship reclamation, why, how to navigate the process for 3 specific countries. I will be giving some examples from other countries that I've encountered or just work I've done in other areas, but I'm going to be focusing on these 3 just because they're 3 sort of major examples of the sort of path that you might follow for heritage citizenship. They're also the most common countries that I personally work with. I'm also going to be going over common challenges that I see people encounter, common pitfalls, issues, and just some general tips for success, which apply actually for pretty much any citizenship reclamation process. So, what are citizenship reclamation? What's heritage citizenship? They're 2 separate things. They both end in the same thing, which is what we all want, the passport. So, citizenship reclamation. It's essentially going to be acquisition of citizenship in a country based on your family history. So you're either looking at a reclamation or a confirmation based on your ancestral ties. So my family is from X. I want to be a citizen of X because of this. Or the alternate route is restitution based on persecution. My family was murdered by said country, and I want my citizenship. You did a bad thing to me. I want restitution for this. I myself am a German citizen through the restitution for Nazi crimes. Common countries I see: Germany, Austria, Czechia, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Romania, Hungary, Spain, Portugal. There are many, many, many countries that people commonly take the route of reclaiming citizenship through. And I do see all of these on a fairly regular basis. Motivations: essentially the same reason any of our ancestors have moved: fear, uncertainty, politics, rising anti-Semitism, economic uncertainty, wanting a better education. Insert a reason here. It's the same reason that anybody has ever migrated. Ancestral trauma, wanting to, set right a wrong, saying, you took this away from me, I want it back. You took this away from my great-grandparents, I want this back. And there's benefits, there's an EU passport gives you EU mobility. You don't have to live in the country that you've obtained citizenship from. You can live somewhere else. There's access to healthcare, job markets, education. And there's also a degree of it that is, reconnecting with your family history and exploring it on a very deep level. So, like I said, I'm discussing 3 paths today, not discussing all of them, only 3. If I was discussing all of them, this would be a much, much longer talk. So, we're going to go over the basics. Germany, we're only looking at Holocaust restitution. So what are we going to require? Vital records, so basically proving that you are descended from the person who was persecuted. This is important no matter how many generations it is, whether you're claiming through a great-grandparent or your parent, you have to provide that document trail to prove that you are actually the descendant of that person. And you need that proof of ancestral persecution. Secondly, Hungary. 2 options here: ancestral citizenship or Holocaust restitution. Proof of ancestral citizenship, vital and immigration records, and depending on the path that you take, so if you're not taking the Holocaust restitution route, language tests. I'm going to come back to that later because that is probably the largest hurdle for people with Hungary. And finally, Poland, ancestral citizenship. Once again, proof of ancestral citizenship, violent immigration records are what's going to be required there. Poland in particular has a very, very specific and strict date requirement that I'm going to come back to. Every process is going to require you to prove your relationship to the ancestor in question. You're going to do that via long form certified vital records. I'm emphasizing that. I'm going to come back to emphasizing that again. This means that the souvenir copy of your marriage record, it's not going to be effective. You're going to want a new copy of everything that you can request a new copy be issued of. You're going to need identity documents for yourself, prove, you're who you say you are, your passport, ID documents. This seems elementary. I promise I've run into people who don't see that they have to prove who they are as well as who their ancestor is. You do. This also means that if you've changed your name, whether because of marriage or because you chose to, you do also have to prove that path to the name change. Immigration and emigration documents. So you want the documentation, of course, of your ancestor entering the country that they're in. In some cases, you also may have documents proving that they left. Those are extremely useful, in particular for a country such as Poland. Many of these countries are going to require translations of these documents. They will often require a certified translation. Poland in particular is very picky about this, and I'm going to revisit that in a moment. They will require an FBI background check, as well as a background check from any other jurisdiction you've lived in. And you're going to need an apostille. You're going to need to, have this certified on a higher level that this is in fact a true legal copy of wherever the document is. So we'll start out with a basic, with the route that I'm, of course, most familiar with, only because it's the route I've taken myself. German citizenship. This route applies to, and this is a direct quote from the law, victims of persecution by the Nazi regime who were deprived of their German nationality on political, racial, or religious grounds between January 30th, 1933 and May 8th, 1945, along with their descendants. This is because citizenship was revoked, never granted, or surrendered. So, for example, if you're, in my case, and your family left in 1938 because they were being persecuted, and insert everything there, that's a case. These requirements have also widened hugely over time. If you weren't eligible previously, you might be now. I wouldn't have been eligible under the oldest form of the law because my grandfather technically was never a German citizen, despite being born in Germany to a German mother, because my great-grandmother lost her citizenship through marriage to my great-grandfather. However, the citizenship requirements have widened over time. Even if you've looked into this in the past, if you've looked into this 5 years ago, 10 years ago, look into it again. If there might be a chance that you're eligible, it's very likely you are. This also applies to Austria, by the way, who have widened the eligibility for their own path to include a lot of the lands that constituted the former Austro-Hungarian Empire. So, as I said before, if you weren't eligible in the past, you might actually be eligible now through one of these paths. It's worth revisiting. So, document requirements. You have to prove the path to your ancestor. So, I'm going to use my own example in this case. I had to provide my birth certificate, my parents' marriage. So, my birth certificate, of course, gives my parents' names where they're born. Their marriage provides that information again, indicating that they are the same couple that had me, provides their parents' names where they're born. My father's birth certificate provided his parents' names where he's born. I'm confirming this path, his parents' marriage, my grandfather's immigration. In this case, I was actually going through my great-grandmother, whose naturalization petition is here. This is my evidence of loss of citizenship. We have Elsa Hollander, born Cohen. She is a country of which I'm a citizen is stateless, last of Germany. So there's that very clear statement. I've lost my German citizenship. I did require additional proof that she had lost her German citizenship, but that right there is the first sort of step towards she is not a German citizen. And she specifically had that citizenship revoked. And you also need the evidence of persecution. In this case, it's very cut and dried based on the dates involved and the names involved and the people involved. Some cases, it's not as cut and dried. You do need to be able to prove that. Most of the time, though, it is as simple as my ancestor was Jewish living in Germany in this time period. So that's German. German is, I will generally say this, is the most straightforward route. Hungarian is a straightforward route. It has a much wider requirement area, but it does have a few pitfalls in it. First of all, Hungarian applies to anyone who is descended from a Hungarian citizen. There's no generation limit. There's no time limit. So if your ancestor was, for example, a citizen of the Kingdom of Hungary as part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, you could have a case. They come to the US in 1880, you could have a case. By verification, statement, Holocaust restitution, or simplified naturalization. So we have 4 paths depending on your genealogical details. Whether we're looking at a person who, like I said, left in 1880 and you're descended from them, or if your parents left Hungary in the 1960s. There are different paths. Each path has a different requirement set. Hungary is going to be one where, and Poland is as well, where there are major dates at play. October 1st, 1957, we're going to be looking at the gender laws are going to change. So a child born after the state to a Hungarian citizen is automatically a Hungarian citizen at birth. You're born before that date, Hungarian mother, non-Hungarian father, you're not a citizen, but you can naturalize via statement and do what's called the simplified naturalization. Like I said, it's complex, and the genealogical details here matter a huge amount. So a woman who married a non-Hungarian before the state actually lost her citizenship, so her children born after the state weren't citizens. So if your ancestor, if you're claiming through a female line, your ancestors got married, we'll say September of 57. Your female ancestor lost her Hungarian citizenship, so even if she gives birth to you or your parent after 57, that person is not an automatic citizen. Next date, September 1st, 1929. If your ancestor left Hungary before the state, they could lose citizenship by continuously residing outside of Hungary for 10 years. There are some caveats to this. They could continue to register, they could continue to visit, and there are still paths for you, even if that happened. It's just not going to be the simplified naturalization process. Finally, 1921, your ancestor resided outside of Hungary, but in Europe. They lost their citizenship. They became a citizen of that country with specific exceptions. Once again, all this does is prevent you from taking the simplified route. There are still additional routes to take. So the easiest route, verification of citizenship. My direct male line ancestor left the territory within the borders of present-day Hungary after 1929. You know, my ancestor, my grandfather was born in Budapest, and he only left it in 1940. This is a very straightforward route. You need to provide, in addition to, filling out the form, relevant birth, marriage, long form, certified translation, anything that you have that could prove the Hungarian citizenship of your ancestors. So anything from visa documents to their passport. A lot of people actually will have their ancestors' passport. Anything that can prove this Hungarian citizenship, your birth, marriage, and divorce records, to properly register them in Hungary. Without this, your citizenship can't actually be confirmed. So you will actually be re-registering your vital events in the country of citizenship. This is going to be the easiest route by far. Simplified naturalization is next. All of that's still required. Plus, you need to be able to communicate in Hungarian. They will interview you. It's not a very complex interview. You don't have to be 100% fluent, but you do need to be able to communicate in Hungarian. This is the major stumbling block for most people with Hungary. Hungarian is not an easy language at all. It is actually, if anybody here knows much about language family or language groups, for example, we know how Spanish and French are related. They're both Romance languages. Dutch and English and German are all Germanic languages. Hungarian is not. Hungarian is not even Indo-European. Hungarian is sort of related to Finnish. It's sort of related to Estonian. It is a very difficult language to learn because it does not adhere to any of the rules from any language that you might already know. So proceed with caution here and do not go through with it if you are taking this route unless you are confident in your ability to do this interview. I've seen people be completely prepared, and then when they get on the spot, they don't have the language knowledge and they rushed it, and then they have to start all over. Don't do that. It's a difficult route. It is absolutely doable, but it is a difficult route. If you have issues with languages, though, this might not be the best route for you. So then we get to the third, and this is probably the most common one I get approached about just because of the historic, Jewish population of Poland, which is Polish citizenship. Most important thing about this, and this is going to be the number one pitfall, and there's no sideways way around this. There's no back door. It's always one where people are trying to negotiate it out, and there really isn't. Your ancestor has to have resided in Poland after January of 1920. So they have to have been a resident of the Second Polish Republic, not, from Poland, but living in another country in Europe or have moved to the US after January 1920. And they cannot have lost their Polish citizenship. You need an unbroken line unless you're taking the more complex route. Once again, there are two routes here. One is more complicated than the other. They both exist. They are both viable. I have seen success in both ways. So once again, document requirements. Poland is going to be one of the more difficult ones with document requirements. You also are going to have to be more careful with the documents with Poland because they are sticklers. Number one, and in many ways the most important, you need proof of your ancestors' Polish citizenship. Passport is great. Anything that shows that not only were they a Polish citizen, but they are residing in Poland after 1920. If we have a birth record in Poland in 1925, that's great. That's fantastic. But if we have, nothing that shows that they're there, then you can start to run into issues. If you have their passport, sometimes I've seen departure records from the town itself where the town will register who's left the community. Those are great. There are ways to prove this. It, again, just is not going to be as straightforward as others. You need proof that no one along the line lost citizenship. Two caveats here. First way to lose citizenship, you need the restoration of a lost citizenship if they've naturalized along the line. Most people are going to take this route. However, if your ancestor served in a foreign military before January 19th, 1951, you're out of luck. Exception to this, of course, is if they served, World War II in an allied nation, then you're great, you're fine, whatever. That's not a problem. But if they served in a foreign military before January 19th, 1951, you are excluded from being able to obtain Polish citizenship. This is a major issue specifically for Israelis because of 1948. So please be aware of this. That military service, there's no route after that. And again, only before January 19th, 1951. Finally, and this is again a very specific one, and I actually have a very funny tidbit about this. Funny. Everything has to be translated, but not just by a certified translator, by a Polish government approved translator who is approved for your specific languages. Best example I will give here. The nearest English to Polish certified translator for the Polish government is actually located in Texas. I'm in New York. There is a native English speaker who is a certified translator for German to Polish in New Jersey. Even though English is her native language and she is clearly fluent in Polish, she cannot do, according to the Polish government, English to Polish. So we have to send it to Texas. Bureaucracy always wins, essentially. But be aware that this is an issue in and of itself. You do have to have it translated by the correct translator. It can be an odd pitfall, but it is one nonetheless. You don't want to go through all of this and then have everything, have a perfect application, and then the wrong translator. You're also going to have to fill out a form in Polish. This is fairly straightforward, but you will have to provide these biographical details both about yourself and your ancestor. So I keep talking about, getting documents. You have to have this document, you have to have that document, long form, certified. Okay. First, you're going to need the vital records, again, to prove your path backwards. So New York City Department of Health, Florida State Department of Health, the General Records Registry Office, whatever the relevant government agency is for your vital event, you have to obtain that record from them. So in my case, if I want to obtain my marriage, I go to the county clerk. If I want to obtain my birth, Florida State Department of Health. And it's following that path, making sure I'm going to the right government agency and getting the full long form certified copy, not a genealogical copy, not the abbreviated copy. You want that long form copy that has all of the details. Otherwise, they're just going to send it back and say, we can't do anything with this. You also need the documents from the country that you're looking to naturalize in. So you can't just, stop the work at the border. You have to request the birth record from Hungary. You have to request it from Germany, Poland, whatever the country is that is relevant here, you need that document. You're also going to need copies of the relevant immigration or naturalization documents, or, a proof that they don't exist. National Archives, USCIS, etc. A visa file is amazing. It's absolute gold for this kind of work, and that does exist for immigrations after 1924 to the US. But you do have to either obtain that document, obtain the proof of naturalization, or get basically a no record found, a certified document that says this does not exist, this person never naturalized. When you're requesting these documents, the forms are filled out. They're sent in either electronically or by mail. Sometimes you need a specific type of check. Sometimes it is an electronic transfer. Sometimes it's even a wire transfer. Some jurisdictions take a lot longer than others to reply. Be aware of this. New York State, of course, is the evergreen example of this, as they are currently taking over 2 years to reply. In those cases, you can go to the town directly. Some states do have what I'll refer to as a backdoor, but just be aware that some jurisdictions take forever to reply to you. Now, I keep saying long form, certified, you need the right documents. There's no shortcut here. There's, you can't be like, oh, I have everything, and then have the souvenir copy of your marriage record. That won't work. The birth record that the hospital issued when you were born, that's not going to work. You need to get a new copy of it. I always tell people to get the new copies. Get two. Have a copy of it anyways. It's a good thing to have. But make sure that you get that long form certified copy, because otherwise you're going to be going back and back and back in circles. Lack of genealogical knowledge. What do I mean by that? If you're going into this saying, I want to apply for citizenship in Poland, but I don't know where my great grandfather was born, I don't know when he came to America, and I'm really not sure what his name was, that can be an issue. You're putting the cart before the horse. You have to make sure that you have the genealogical knowledge and either are looking to evaluate, am I even eligible? And also make sure that you're looking in the right place. If you're requesting everything in the US and then you're like, oh no, I have no idea where in Poland to even start. I don't know when he came to America. I don't know when he was born. I don't know any of this. You're putting the cart before the horse. And on that note, are you actually eligible? Check your dates, check them again, triple check them. There are some legal oddities out there. The most specific and most severe of them is actually Greece, who, while they offer heritage citizenship, every Jew that we have known that has obtained heritage citizenship has then had it revoked, as they have clarified in Greece multiple times over the last few decades at this point that their heritage citizenship is only for ethnic Greeks, in other words, non-Jews. So even if, for example, as my husband's family was, you were in that land for generation after generation, and you would normally be eligible, you're not, because the law itself is the way it is. And can you actually prove the eligibility? This is where it gets difficult, and this is the thing I hate. Sometimes somebody is 100% eligible. We know for a fact that they are eligible, but it cannot be proven. And this is the worst thing. We might have somebody, and I've run into this, where somebody will have survived the Holocaust and they're in a DP camp. We know where this person is born. We have, their records in the US say, oh yes, I'm born in Łódź, I'm born in Warsaw. But they may have changed their name. They may have done something, or simply put, the records might not exist, and there's no way to link them to that identity in Poland. There's no way. And in those cases, even though that person might be 100% eligible, the proof just doesn't exist in the way that we need it to. And I hate that, because there's nothing more frustrating than being able to say, yes, you are eligible, but there's no way to prove this. Are you managing your expectations? As with my Greece example, as with certain other countries, some countries are very notorious about how they adjudicate Jewish cases. Lithuania and Latvia historically are very much, they've actually been the subject of lawsuits. Certain consulates can throw up more barriers than others. Sometimes it does depend on the way the wind is blowing through a bureaucrat's brain. And even if you do absolutely everything right, they can still rule against you for ideas that somebody has come up with that day, which again, we've had to appeal because somebody should 100% be eligible. They have provided every document that says they are eligible, and still the government says, no, you're not, because I've invented a new requirement today. We hate this. A lot of the consulates specifically will throw up barriers when nobody expects one. And finally, my very favorite pitfall. This is one that sounds odd. Are you already a citizen? I've run into this. I used to work with somebody who she said to me, I really want to get citizenship. My father came from, I'm not going to specify the country in this case. I really want to be a citizen. I want to go there. I want to go live where my grandparents are. My grandparents are getting older. I'd really like to relocate. Okay, well, when did your dad naturalize? Oh, he never did. Okay. Was your birth registered with the consulate? In her case, it turned out she was already a citizen. She didn't need to do anything except go request a copy of her passport. She was registered. This can happen. It's less common with Jews, but I have seen it. And it's my very favorite pitfall because it means that we skip all of this and you're already good. We like this route. So, more practical tips. Number one, as I said before, be confident in the details of the family history before starting the process. Don't start shelling out potentially hundreds of dollars on certified documents and then say, oh, wait, when did my grandfather actually come to America? You don't want to be out, a couple $100, have all these documents everywhere, be getting certified translations, and then realize you're not eligible. You've seen this. It's not good. It's rough on everybody. Number two, build a clear timeline, a checklist, have a spreadsheet, whatever way you stay organized the best. Stay organized. Know what you need to order, what needs to be done, what documents have arrived, and your next steps. Know what do you have to prove? Do I have to prove when they left the country? Do I have to prove that I'm descended from this person? What documents prove what step? And do I have them? When did I order them? Who did I order them from? And also, how much did I pay? You want to make sure that you have every step of this and have a handle on it, because it's very, very easy to lose track, especially when just document ordering can take a year. And three, seek professional help. Legal assistance, when needed. Certain countries would require it, many do not. Language teachers, again, don't try to learn Hungarian on your own. You need a teacher. Please, 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 please. Duolingo is not enough. You don't want to waste your whole application and then suddenly, be like, oh no, I can't speak Hungarian, and go into this interview and have to start from scratch. Genealogists, if you can't find this naturalization, you can't find this manifest, you can't find this A number, this alien registration number, reach out to a professional. And finally, consular authorities. This sounds like this should be obvious. For some reason, it isn't. Be willing to reach out and send the email to the consulate and say, hey, I'm looking to apply for citizenship in your country through this route. What do I need? What documents do I need? Do you have any recommendations of somebody for me to hire in Warsaw to get a copy of this record? Do you know, what certified translator is nearest to me? Reach out to the consulate. You'd be surprised. A lot of them are actually oddly very, very helpful. Some of them are not, which is why I say oddly. Some of them are extremely helpful. It's hit or miss, but when you hit, it's very good. And when you do reach out to a professional, though, make sure to provide them with all information. Don't spend your money and then throw a curveball at the last moment. I hate to say it, I've seen this as well. You can't come forward and say, oh, I have all of this. And then applications all prepared and be like, oh yeah, by the way, I was adopted. Well, that opens up a whole new path, whole new thing, whole new set of documents needed. You might no longer be eligible because the way that different countries see adoption, the way that different adoption procedures and different times were taken. So you need to be able to say with sincerity and provide all of the information that is needed in order to make sure that you are eligible and that everything's being followed up on correctly. So I tend to keep things short and sweet because I do leave a lot of space for questions. I know that I can see that people have been putting a lot into the chat. As of Rami said before, and as I said at the beginning, I'm leaving a lot of time for questions. However, I'm not going to be answering questions about your specific case. It's going to be general questions about, it might be about a government agency. It might be about what sort of documents are out there. It might be about, other citizenship paths, although I'm not going to touch too much on those right now. But I am about to open the floor for questions in just one moment. So, key takeaways: heritage citizenship does connect you to your past, secures your future. Each process has unique requirements. Be aware of these requirements. And there are challenges like missing documents, legal nuances, but you can get around them. I've seen cases where we could not locate a birth record for somebody. In this case, it was because it was destroyed in the war. Birth record does not exist, but their visa file had a copy of the original certified birth record that had been certified in the 1930s, which was amazing because the consulate accepted it. There are sometimes ways around these challenges. It does require a little bit of persistence, but there are ways around it. So I am now opening the floor for questions. I'm going over to the Q&A. I think we are in the, I see that a lot of people have posted them in the chat. Just give me one moment. Pulling up the question answer now. So I'm going over to the Q&A now. I see a question. If you have records from something like Family Search, so pictures of a register, for example, do you need certified records? Where and how do you get this? Thank you. So with the Family Search records, yes, you need the certified record. You're going to actually you're going to go to the catalog and look for what the film number is, see who holds these records, what department. Family Search's catalog is actually very good about this, and they do tell you what archive specifically holds the records. You're then going to request a certified copy of the record from that specific archive, government office, etc. I see somebody asked, I've applied for German citizenship and should have no problems getting it. My parents, Jewish, fled Germany in 1938. Where does that leave my spouse who does not have the same background? Can she get German citizenship, a German passport, or right to residency? In this case, for her to become a German citizen, it would have required the typical route of a spouse of a German citizen, so residency and language learning, but she would have the right to reside as your spouse. So I see that somebody says, what if you don't have any documents of them leaving or arriving? Well, first you would have to obtain them. You'd have to locate the documents, do the research. And you said that all 4 of your great-grandparents left what is now Lithuania, Belarus, Moldova, Russia between 2006 and 1911 in response to the pogroms. There's likely not a route for you. There might be a route for you from Moldova. Again, I'm not going to get too specific, but there might be a route through Romania. It just honestly depends on the specifics of the family and the specific of the history. So someone said, I was born in Germany in a post-war DP camp. I have a birth certificate. Who should I contact to try and get German citizenship? In this case, you'll go through the application for the German citizenship. It depends on a few details, but you actually might be able to take this route through the new law. I would contact your relevant consulate and see what they have to say, but you actually may have a route now through the most recent change in the law. So I see a question regarding Polish citizenship, and this is actually a question that I get fairly frequently. What if the Polish town is now part of Ukraine due to post-World War II territorial changes? What matters in this case is, were they a citizen of Poland as Poland was as of the interwar period? So you want that period. Were they a Polish citizen after January 1920? Even if that town is no longer Poland, they were a Polish citizen in that time period. That is what matters. Um, so I see somebody said Vilna ancestors, what years are in and out of qualifying. This is going to be similar to Poland. You want that interwar period. I see someone says Hungarian reading, writing, and verbal. What level of speaking is household Hungarian enough? In this case, it would be enough to have a basic, simple conversation with somebody at the consulate. It's an interview. Questions I've heard about them asking in the past have been things like, why do you want to become a Hungarian citizen? Where were you born? It's definitely not, 101 level Hungarian, but it's not, complete and absolute fluency. Someone said, I assume ancestry is strictly based on blood, so adopted children and grandchildren are not eligible. Is that correct? Like a lot of things, yes and no, and that depends. It's going to depend on the date of the adoption, the country that they were adopted in, as well as which country you're applying to. Some countries see adoption differently than others. It's extremely case dependent. Romania has its own set of laws. Again, you're going to want the boundary changes, but there was a Romania before World War I. It just had different borders than modern day Romania, of course. But Romania, again, you're going to want the space that has been Romania. There are very specific requirements with Romania, like everywhere regarding what territory. Again, it's complicated. Hungarian language is not still a requirement if the request is based on Holocaust restitution, which was a question somebody asked. Somebody said, if you have relatives living in Poland who have never left, not Jewish through your paternal line. So the question isn't so much relatives, it's who are you descended from? So an uncle or a cousin isn't going to be relevant here. It's that direct line of descent. Can you seek Polish citizenship if the ancestors came before 1921? If they came after January of 1920, it has to fall after January 1920. So if they came before 1921, but they came in 1920, then yes. Otherwise, no. Someone said they heard me say A file. What is that? So after 1940, if somebody is residing in the United States as a non-citizen, they have what's referred to as an alien registration file. That file is assigned a number and contains a number of documents relating to how the person got here, their activities in the US, whether or not they've gone abroad, their citizenship, vital records, identity. It's extremely useful for this sort of case. Do you have to get copies from NARA, etc., if you have the original naturalization forms in hand? Yes. The original naturalization forms, the ones that you end up with, are typically going to not be a certified copy. They're going to be the sort of, I hate to say souvenir, but they're going to be the copy that, you get at the end of the day, the certificate. You want the original long form copies. I can't harp on this enough. When in doubt, request a new copy. So I see, if one is successful obtaining citizenship through these methods, are their children automatically included or must they apply on their own? It depends on the age of the child, when the child was born, and also which country you are applying to. Again, it's complicated. Every country has different laws regarding this. If we're talking about a child under the age of 5, it's going to be very different than if your child is 25, etc. Parents were US citizens, but naturalization docs are not available. Would something like Social Security or voter ID work to show they were US citizens? No. Social Security numbers are issued to people who are not citizens to work legally in the United States. But also, you need to be able to show the naturalization document. You should be able to obtain them. That's really more of a very specific question, but you should be able to obtain those naturalization records regardless. Can we get records from European countries with English only, or do we need to be able to read the native language to read the website and fill out forms? Like many things, this is very country dependent. However, there does tend to be a degree of English language fluency. A lot of the time you can get away with doing it in English. I would try and request it at least in the other language, but you can sort of play around with it. Just, it is very country dependent, as many things are, but there does tend to be a little bit more forgiveness on this angle. You have to renounce citizenship in other countries to be a U.S. citizen. Would successfully becoming another citizen have consequences for U.S. citizenship? Typically, no. The U.S. is just won't recognize that you're a citizen of another country. I can't, leave the US on my German passport because they would look at me like I'm a crazy person and say, who are you? What are you trying to do? But the same as, me coming back into the US on my German passport. But I'm still a US citizen. I am just also a German citizen. Um, is there any gold standard documents for German citizenship that prove eligibility, such as the original Reichspass used to get out of the country? That would be what I would call a gold standard document. Any evidence of persecution in a concentration camp tends to be a gold standard document. Even just I say just, but even an entry in the Reichsgazette saying that, this person's citizenship was revoked. But in general, they tend to be, if the person is clearly Jewish, according to the records, and in Germany in the period stated, that tends to be enough depending on the consulate. What is a copy? I have copies of marriage and birth records, but they were issued much later after the events, and the document name is actually government recognition of the events. I also have copies of the exit passport, all have Romanian government stamps. So a copy is essentially a copy of the document. It's another it isn't the original document. Many of these countries, if we're talking about in other countries, a lot of these documents are actually going to be in a ledger form. So obviously you're not, walking in with the book, but you can have a formal copy of the record issued. It's country dependent, but you do need to have the formal certified copy issued. I always tell people have it reissued. First names is a problem if the ancestors' first names change on documents from birth to immigration to the U.S. records. Nothing official, just choice. You need to be able to prove that path from the name changes. So again, go back to my own family. My family was in Germany, then Uruguay, then the United States. So my great grandfather's records say Bernhard, they say Bernardo, and they say Bernard. I'm able to prove that he is all three of these people based on the documents that I have. Some of the documents, I have the documents of him entering and leaving countries. His citizenship document and his alien registration file provide all of the names that he's gone as. I also have documents that say, he is the man who's born on this date, this country, and his parents were these two people. And this is consistent across all these documents. However, depending on the country at hand, this may be an issue. Sometimes you have to go back and actually have a document amended to say an AKA. It's a pain, but it is something that does have to happen at times. Are American naturalization documents, foreign birth records, ship manifests, etc., downloaded from Ancestry or other sites acceptable to answer some of these questions, such as when a person left a country and for what reasons? They are acceptable to answer the question for your own reasons. They are not acceptable as a formal document unless you have obtained a certified copy of the document. So this is, I know I keep harping on this. This is kind of what I mean when I say, there's no backdoor to it. You have to be able to get the certified copy, the formal document to submit to the country. Does service in military in Israel prior to independence result in disqualification? Yes. And that is the big issue with Poland, is specifically, like I said, it's specifically an issue for Israelis. That's really where the biggest pitfall that I see appear. I see if you have original birth certificates, etc., from Germany, do you need to get copies? My answer for this will always be yes. Always get another copy. Also, if you have, a birth certificate from the 1930s, don't send it away to somebody. Don't, get it don't get it stamped. Don't risk losing that. valuable for sentimental reasons in many cases. Don't send it away. Get another copy, get a newly certified copy, get a shiny new copy that you can send away to somebody. So I see I had everything lined up for Slovakian citizenship, but apparently my great grandfather left 12 years before the deadline. Is there anything I could do about that? No. I hate that answer. But in this case, it is sort of the same issue that we run into with Poland. Some things are hard yes or no's. In this case, there's no way to proceed. If you do not fall in the parameters of that country, you don't fall in the parameters. Where do you get a visa file? From USCIS or from the National Archives? In this case, it's going to be from USCIS. I'm assuming you mean a US visa file. So in that case, from USCIS. So I see I have a lot of questions about Israeli service for Poland. It's, again, that tends to be the biggest non-starter that I run into, is that specific 1951 date for Poland. If there's a military service in a foreign country that is not service in an allied nation during the Second World War, you're out of luck. It's a problem. It's a major problem. It is the biggest issue I run into with this. Would Austria have a similar process to Germany? Yes. Getting into it, I would end up going long beyond time, and I'm already running up on time. So I'm keeping an eye on that. But yes, there is a route. If you have an option of one country or another, for example, mom born in a DP camp in Austria, grandparents were survivors from Poland, do you have any suggestion about which country to pursue first? What's an easier path preferable? Go for Austria before Poland. Poland requires a lot more proof, unless you happen to have every single document under the sun. I would go the Austria route personally. So people are asking me for recommendations for attorneys, etc. Again, I'm not giving specific recommendations right now for either for somebody to hire or for any of that. And it's very, very, very situation dependent. Many of these paths don't require an attorney. It just depends. People, once again are asking, is there any way to obtain Polish citizenship if your ancestor left before 1920? No. Moment. I see a question about, can I speak as to whether a person living in Vilnius in the late 1920s is covered by Polish law versus Lithuanian laws? Yes, I can, because that person was residing within Poland. If they were a Polish citizen, then I would go the Poland route. And if you have an option that is not Lithuania or Latvia, I would take that option. They are better now than they have been in the past, but they are still not the best routes to go. So I'm just taking a look now. Apologize, I'm just going through a lot of these are very specific. For Polish citizenship, does naturalization to the US qualify? For one route, yes, but there is an additional route. It's the most common route that I see. I very rarely have people take the more simplified route. How children of Jews thrown out of Poland in 1968 qualify? What path do they need to take? You're going to have a much simpler path because they were very clearly in Poland after 1920, but you're going to take the same path as the others, unless, of course, you have a consular registration, in which case you're golden. How can we learn about the requirements for Spain? That is actually my husband's area, and so I'm not going to go into that in particular, but Spain in particular is a recent complication. There are still one route, but it's a little more complicated. How long does the process typically take to get approved once you apply in Germany? It depends. Lately, they have, for a variety of reasons, been swamped with a lot of applications, in particular since last fall. And in particular, actually, since October 7th, but also in the last year, as well. And so the waiting time is a lot longer than it has been in the past. When I applied, it only took 8 months. The waiting time is much, much longer now. So I'm just taking a look. Someone said people that smuggled out from communist Hungary before the 56 revolution came to America on fake name on DP immigration quota. How do you go about recreating the lineage? It really depends on what documents exist. This could be one of those cases, though, that I kind of referred to, where there might be a case where you are 100% eligible, but the documentation just doesn't exist. So I'm just taking a look. Name was changed as a part of naturalization. How do you handle that? Well, if the name is changed as a part of the naturalization, it will actually be noted on the naturalization document. Similarly, there are going to be AKs, like I said before, in an alien file. There are ways to work through a name change. It just depends on really how the person chose to do their name change. So I'm just taking a look. So I see, will Germany accept copies of certified birth certificates issued before 1920? Well, I submitted let me clarify here. If the copy was made before 1920, this is going to be one of my cases where I say just get another copy, get a new copy unless the original document no longer exists, get a new copy, because of it will, in this case, kind of depend on the consulate's mood, which consulate you're going to, and also you don't want to lose the document. So in this case, I would obtain a new copy. My answer will always be obtain a new copy. So I'm taking a look. Father left Poland pre-1920, but grandfather continued to live there until he died in 1936. Eligible or no? That would not be an eligibility situation, because that's what I meant by the line being broken. Even if grandpa kept living there, dad came and that's who you're descended from, so that's where the line gets broken. Is a birth in 1875 too early for Romania? It's less about the time frame, more about what degree are you descended from this person? Is this your grandparent? Is this your parent? Or is this your great 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 grandparent? That's going to be the read there. So I have many questions still here. So I do.
Kaylin, maybe we'll do maybe two more and then we'll wrap up for today.
So I see somebody asked about being born in Poland in 1945 without documents. How is citizenship proved? There are still going to be other documents besides a birth record. You can also have a birth record issued. I have had them actually issued for people who were born, for example, in a ghetto. It's not a common path, but it is a path that most areas will do. You still can prove that the person was born there. It's a delayed birth record. Otherwise, immigration documents can prove the citizenship. All these other records. So I see that somebody did ask, if one has the genealogical info, is it worth the money to get a professional to get all the necessary documents? It depends on the country at hand. I have outright had people approach me to hire me, and I've said to them, you don't need me for this. Usually those are cases where it's either the person who is reclaiming their own revoked citizenship or a person who is the first generation after the person with revoked citizenship. So it depends on the process you're taking. It depends on the country at hand, depends on your linguistic skills. It depends on, like most things with this process, a billion different aspects. In some cases, you're not going to need somebody. In some cases, you absolutely will. I see, is there a resource with all the information by country? I really wish there was. A lot of these countries are more of a, almost like a chart than a straight up, this is this and this is that. A lot of these guidelines do change, and then sometimes, and this is the very frustrating thing, sometimes consulates take it upon themselves to have a stance. So it really does depend on the country at hand. Um, so I think, should I take one more of Rami or?
Okay, sure, sure. You could do one more.
Okay, so I see somebody asked about a naturalization certificate and the N400. Show the name change as the parent, but not for the child who gets citizenship as a derivative. How do you work around this issue? In this case, I would actually show the name change of the parent and then show subsequent documents with that child using the different name. Um, it's very, very situation dependent. A lot of the time, though, especially with later immigrations, name changes can be documented through actual paper documents. Otherwise, depending on the country, you may have to have a record amended, which is very frustrating, I know, or you may be able to prove that it is, in fact, the same person. So I think I'm going to have to, there's still a ton of questions, but we just are running out of time. Yeah.
Okay. Caitlin, thank you so much. Incredibly informative. Thanks for all the questions that you answered. Really appreciate you taking the time to be here. We really thank everybody from around the world who has joined us for today's talk. Our next Jewish Gen talk will take place a week from today, next Wednesday. That's the 26th. We will be hearing from Brad Pomerantz, who is the host of Generations, which is the new Jewish themed genealogy TV series. That is scheduled to premiere on March 3rd, which will be profiling Cameron and Milo Manheim. So he will be talking about the show, and we hope that you will all join us for that. That again will be next week on Wednesday. So later today or tomorrow, we'll send out an email with which has a link to today's recording, along with a link to register for next week's webinar.
Can you also include my contact information in it? Because I have a bunch of people asking for it. And I know if I, read off my email in the chat, I know that it'll probably get lost. So I see a bunch of people are popping up in the corner for it. So
Absolutely. Thank you, Caitlin, for giving out your contact information. I hope you will be glad with the many questions that I'm sure will come your way. So that's very kind of you.
I know they'll be coming, but I figure I might as well answer them.
Okay, well, that's very kind of you. So thank you again. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and I wish everybody a wonderful rest of the day. Take care.